Yeah, we're at 7:00. We're going to give it another minute or two until we get started.
Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, Mike. How are you tonight?
Not too bad. How's your week been?
Pretty quiet. I had to think back about it when I do this weekend. Yeah, it was pretty quiet.
That's good.
Yes. We like when things are quiet for the most part at our age.
I understand.
It was funny. I guess it's my wife's nieces, a couple of her nieces from different sisters, each had new babies like a day apart about a week and a half ago. And, so her thread on one of her messaging apps or whatever just kind of blew up with pictures and oohs and ahs and all this new baby stuff. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I am so like just disconnected with new baby stuff at my age. My baby's like over 45 years old. It's like, yeah, it's wonderful to kind of see at a distance, but I was finally one of those where it was great to become a grandparent because you knew you could give them back.
Yep. Except mine lives in the same house as I do.
Oh, well, I'm sure there's plenty of pleasure that comes along with that.
Some.
So where are we at here? We are at 7:02. Let me just kind of finish getting a couple things organized and we will get started. All righty. Actually, just clicked over 7:03. My name is Scott Weldon. This is the South Carolina Normal Cannabis Conversation. All of our meetings are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, purchase, or distribution of cannabis. We do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind. Go ahead and close that up. All right. Again, this is the South Carolina Cannabis Conversation. My name is Scott. I'm the Executive Director of South Carolina Chapter of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And I want to start by welcoming everybody who's here in the meeting with us tonight. Anybody who may be watching on our live stream on YouTube. Actually, I just got a message in from somebody I believe is watching on YouTube. And also welcome anybody who might be watching our YouTubes later on as they as a recording. As I mentioned YouTube, I do want to note that we do not monitor the comment section on YouTube while we are live streaming. So if you do have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them down below and we will come back and try and address your questions, comments, and concerns when YouTube is done. YouTube is done processing whatever they do, the video, and they let us back in. Again, welcome to everyone that's with us. Tonight's topic is marijuana decriminalization and some talking points on why the need to decriminalize. I will sort of apologize in advance on this because of the document link that I shared with everybody from Normal is a pretty old link. It looks like originally, or it was posted in March of 2003. So we're going back 18 years on this one. A lot of the data that I have on this particular report is only into the year 2000, maybe 2001. And it just so happened I came across this while doing a search for talking points from Normal, figuring they would have something. And when they revamped the website last year, they unlinked, I guess would be the best way to phrase it. They unlinked thousands and thousands of old documents. Many of these documents are still live. They're still out there. It's just they're not linked through the national site anymore. They've sort of redirected all the menuing of their site. So some of these reports are no longer out there, or the links have been kind of, I don't know, turned off from the live site, or I don't know how it all works. But if you'd like to find something a little bit more updated, I'm going to share one, and I'm not even sure the exact date on this, but I see some of the dates of the documentation is more recent. So let me drop this into the chat window. And this one's from Marijuana Policy Project. I'm seeing right off the bat, this one has some dates like 2017 in there from reports concluded, blah, blah, blah. Excuse me. But I am going to start first off with Normal's document. And again, I will share that link with you. Again, it's an older document. So what we'll do is refer back to the Marijuana Policy Project one in a little bit for hopefully some updated info. I'm just going to pop up my share on this. And I do want to point out that decriminalization and the harms coming from criminalization are the primary topic for our January convocation seminar and trade show in Columbia. So this will be just sort of a little bit of an early primer. One thing that I liked with the old Normal version is they had 4 basic talking points. And then as you would go through the document, you could see how it expanded on each of those talking points. We're just going to go ahead and read down through the 4 points to start with. Talking point number 1, decriminalizing marijuana frees up police resources to deal with more serious crimes. Talking point number 2, far more harm is caused by criminal prohibition of marijuana than by the use of marijuana itself. That's one I kind of repeat all the time. Talking point 3, decriminalization does not lead to greater marijuana use. Talking point 4, criminal laws prohibiting marijuana possession do not deter marijuana use. So again, those are the 4 top talking points that that Normal was suggesting 18 years ago when this particular report came out. For some of you that just joined, let me go ahead and redrop those links in the chat window here. Now I have to go find chat again. Got it. There it is. Okay. This is for those who just joined us because I don't know if the chat refreshes for new visits. This is the document we're working on now, marijuana decriminalization talking points. This was put out by Normal, and I apologize to the group earlier. To those who are just joining us, this document is like over 18 years old, so I do apologize for that. The other one I'm going to share with you is a marijuana policy project document that is a lot newer. Yeah, I didn't get the right one. There you go. Okay, so the MPP one, as you'll see, mpp.org and also normal.org. Those are the 2. I'm looking first at this normal. Oh, I'm sorry, I went to the wrong one. this normal doc, marijuana decriminalization talking points. So again, for those that just joined us, we went over these 4 top talking points, and we're going to kind of walk through them a little bit. I don't want to spend too much time, but when I realized how old this document was, it made me wonder how updated some of this information is on the other document. And that was a pretty big doc, so I'm not going to sit and go back and forth and search them. And if any of you, as we go through, have any updated info for me, feel free to shout it out or throw it in the chat. But again, talking point 1 was decriminalizing marijuana frees up police resources to deal with more serious crimes. Excuse me again. Sort of ironically, being an 18-year-old document, this argument has not changed at all, and probably has even become a little bit more applicable in the past couple of years. We've had the phrase thrown about, defund the police, which I think is a horrible chant because it really is inaccurate. What it's looking to do is reallocate funding, much of the funding that's going to law enforcement, reallocated to other social services, and taking a lot of the burden off of police for dealing with mental health issues, which they're not trained to do. And yes, as Shane put it here, the talking points are all still on point. And it's gotten, even more prominent over the past couple of years when, let's say 2 years ago, when the ACLU report came out and started talking about the imbalance of police enforcement in poor communities. And just overall, since this document came out, how many states have legalized for medical use? How many more have legalized, how many have also legalized for recreational use? I had the numbers in front of me last night. I don't know. I think it's 36 states that have medical use, 17 or 18 plus the District of Columbia that have adult use. So still very applicable today. Their first talking point here was 60,000 individuals are behind bars for marijuana offenses at a cost of 1.2 billion per year. Those numbers, as you know, have only grown. South Carolina's numbers for possession arrests from 2016 to 2018 doubled from under 16,000 to over 34,000. So imagine that the money's gone into that. Taxpayers annually spend between 7.5 billion and 10 billion arresting and prosecuting individuals for marijuana violations. I mean, $7.5 to $10 billion. Again, imagine those numbers have probably gone up in our state. As far as nationwide, those numbers have probably dropped. I would like to see updated numbers on that, just because of the number of states that have decriminalized. A lot of the things that are in the news lately are courts finding that the smell of marijuana only is no longer cause for a search, or for you're searching you or your vehicle in any state where it's legal, especially if it's adult use legal. So we're moving forward. Those numbers are probably dropping on some of those cases and growing in South Carolina. The state of California saved nearly $1 billion from 76 to 85 by decriminalizing the personal possession of 1 ounce of marijuana. And that's one of the things, again, when we're talking about just decriminalization here in the state, where we'll be talking about that at our event in January. Decriminalize, just an ounce. To our preference would be a no fine, no time, no court cost. Very similar to all but one municipality in Ohio. They're doing basically a no penalty decriminalization. some of you may not know the difference in that, or don't understand. Decriminalization really doesn't make anything legal. It is just affecting the penalty phase of the law. And so some places, many places will have a fine, $25, $100, and then the cop will confiscate your weed and give you a ticket for your cannabis. And you have to pay this as a basically like a parking ticket type thing. But it's we prefer a no fine, no time concept. If there's no money in it for the municipality, they're basically going to confiscate your weed, shush you on your way, and say, don't let me see you around here with weed again, blah, blah, blah. And you won't get into the system at that point. Really protects our children, young people that happen to get caught with a little bit of weed. New Mexico's 2001 State Commission Drug Policy Advisory Group determined that marijuana decriminalization will result in greater availability of resources to respond to more serious crimes without any increased risks to public safety. Again, there's reference links in this if you happen to visit the link I shared with you. I'm not going to go deep diving into that kind of stuff. Again, marijuana arrests have more than doubled since 1991 to when this was put out in 2003, while adult use of the drug has remained stable. During the same period, the number of arrests for cocaine and heroin fell by approximately 33%. I wish I had more updated numbers for you. These are old numbers. But we see it all the time nationwide. Is consumers, for the most part, think, oh, it's weed, it's no big deal, until they get arrested for it. And it's an easy arrest for cops. A lot of times you're like, hey, look, I'm really not worried about it. Just be honest with me. Tell me about it. And then you end up getting, charged for it anyway. And then end up having to do rehab because you had a joint with you. So a lot of resources wasted, a lot of expense to the consumer. It follows you around in your record. Police arrest more Americans per year on marijuana charges than the total number of arrestees for all violent crimes combined. Again, that was from 2001, and those numbers have not changed. Now, some of those numbers are getting harder and harder to get. I don't have the name of it in front of me, but a while ago I posted about a story where the FBI has started collecting data, a lot of different data. I think it was from a bill in 2018, and only about 1/3 of police departments are actually complying and turning over this data on. I think it has to do with drug arrests. It has to do with police shootings, and they're just refusing to be transparent, refusing to turn this information over to the FBI, approximately 2/3 of police forces. If I find that info, I will share it in the chat. It is posted somewhere on our Facebook page. It may go back a while. You can try and search our page for that. But there is an annual report that is supposed to be turned into the FBI, and those numbers have been consistent over the past 2 years. Actually, I think this year actually grew a little. There's a few more departments that just did not comply and turn in their data. More than 734,000 individuals were arrested for marijuana charges in the year 2000. 88% of those arrested were charged with marijuana possession only. Pretty sure those numbers have again increased. I know they have in South Carolina. Again, back in 2003, almost 5 million Americans, actually this is a report from 2000, have been arrested for marijuana since 1992. The war on drugs, folks, is a war on citizens. There's a lot of people talking about medical choice, and this is a medical choice that the government refuses at the federal level, at least to date, refuses to acknowledge. We know compared to 18 years ago when this report came out, we are moving in the right direction. We've got a lot more states coming on board. We do have the MORE Act in the House and the COA in the Senate. Until this Reconstruction Act is kind of settled and stop sucking the air out of the room in the Congress, a lot of this other stuff is on hold. If you were on with us last night, we were talking a bit about the Safe Banking Act and how that has been attached to the National Defense Act. I forget the exact name of it. Yeah, I saw feedback from one of the anti-groups asking their people to fight back against that. It would probably pass even if it wasn't attached, but it would just take longer. Anyway, that's kind of the most coverage here on the talking point one. Decriminalizing would free up police resources to deal with more serious crimes. Questions, comments, thoughts on that? If you'd like to leave them in the chat or turn on your mic, just go for it. Otherwise, we're going to scroll on down to our second headline here. Far more harm is caused by the criminal prohibition of marijuana than by the use of the marijuana itself. Where to start? Where to start? I mean, let's see how far back some of these go here. No, I don't see what I'm thinking about. Okay, I guess we'll kind of start, and it's probably in here somewhere. In 1970, when they enacted the Controlled Substances Act, the CSA, Richard Nixon's administration, one of the stipulations in that there would be a study done on the harms from marijuana. And that was a report put out by the Schaefer Commission 2 years later, excuse me, in 1972. And basically, the Schaefer Commission report came out saying they could not find the addictiveness that would require it to be, Schedule 1. They didn't find the harms coming from it. They felt that it should be decriminalized. And my understanding of it was Nixon exploded, said, what the heck's wrong with all these racial slurs, ethnic slurs, what's the one I'm thinking of? He was really against the Jews, and a lot of them were scientists. And anyway, he was such a racist and a bigot. He started freaking out and just would not accept the report any way, shape, or form. And so that's a good example of one, just the fact that our government doesn't really seem to care that it's relatively harmless. They'd rather impose all these harmful penalties and laws instead. But so point two, and we'll drop through just a couple of these real quick. According to the 1999 Federal Commission report by the National Academy of Sciences Institute of Medicine, except for the harms associated with smoking, the adverse effects of marijuana use are within the range tolerated for other medications. The National Academy of Science further found there is no conclusive evidence that the drug effects of marijuana are causally linked to the substance abuse of other illicit drugs. So there's kind of bye-bye to the gateway theory. More than 7 million Americans have admittedly tried marijuana. That number's grown. The overwhelming majority of these users did not go on to become regular marijuana users, try other illicit drugs, or suffer any deleterious effects of their health. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, 35% of marijuana of adults admit to have trying marijuana. Of these, only 5% have used marijuana in the past year, and only 3% have used marijuana in the past month. Let's look at that report. 2000, we're sure those numbers have grown because we know cannabis use is growing in medical states and in adult use states. So, and those states are not, now this is something I always like, this key point is that these states are not rolling back their marijuana legalization or their medical use legalization. If anything, many of them are expanding upon it. Good example I like to point out is, although many of us are not happy with the Compassionate Care Act Senate version S-150 here in South Carolina, because it does not include the sale purchase of hemp flower, of marijuana flower, should I say, and or the smoking of it. Many of the other states that started without that, with that same thing prohibited, usually within a year or so after, and maybe even longer in South Carolina, but did eventually allow for it. And again, here in South Carolina, we are fully aware that the sponsor of that bill, Tom Davis, had stated very clearly that he understands that there are consumers, there are especially vets with PTSD symptoms that find the efficacy of smoking much more effective than vaping or the extracts or edibles or any of those type of things. And that's been reported not only here in the state, but that's been reported nationwide by vets nationwide. So, and he's admitted the reason he has the no smoking and no flower sale was to appease the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division SLED and our lovely Chief Keel. So, several other states, marijuana offenders may receive maximum sentences of life in prison. Oh, under federal law. There we go. And that's one thing that at least will be resolved if and when the COA moves forward. Again, I was on a meeting with our political director at National a couple of days ago. He says they are in the process of trying to get a meeting scheduled with the senators to reiterate their recommendations for improving the Cannabis Administration and Opportunities Act, COA. All right, let's roll on down to number 3 here real quick. Decriminalization does not lead to greater marijuana use. Government studies conclude that marijuana decriminalization has had virtually no effect on either marijuana use or beliefs and related attitudes about marijuana among young people in the United States that have enacted such a policy. Now, again, that's a relatively old report, but there are much newer reports that have reiterated that same thing in states that have legalized for medical and or for recreational use. So they're showing that, as a matter of fact, in states that seem to be legalizing teen use has stayed much the same, if not dropped. So again, I apologize for some of these older reports that we have here. Citizens who live under decriminalization laws consume marijuana at rates less than or comparable to those who live in regions where the possession of marijuana remains a criminal offense. Again, this is from 2000. And I would probably bet very much that even here in South Carolina, with it being, fully illegal for medical and or recreational use, there are still comparable number of consumers here in the state as there are in any of the other states. There is no evidence the marijuana decriminalization affects either the choice or frequency of use of drugs, either legal such as alcohol or illegal such as marijuana and cocaine. I want to almost roll back a little bit on that, because we have, of course, on one of our fact sheets, talks about the reduction of the use of opioids in states that have legalized. It doesn't necessarily talk about states that have just decriminalized. So maybe that's that difference there. But where there's full legal, or where there's legalization, they are seeing a rollback in use of other drugs, such as opioids. And even some like Dr. Uma consider marijuana the exit drug from addictive substances like alcohol and opioids. States and regions that have maintained the strictest criminal penalties for marijuana possession have experienced the largest proportional increase in use. 1997 report from State Capital Hartford from Connecticut Law Review. And I wouldn't doubt that use is increasing here in South Carolina now that that's kind of brought up. More and more people are finding that the laws are wrong. We know that it's like 90% of the people of our citizens feel that we should decriminalize or should legalize for medical purposes, and or decriminalize and or have full recreation. I haven't checked our little survey in a while. We had only about 200 plus respondents so far, but we were like over 93% said we should full legalize here in South Carolina. It's not a scientific survey, so please take that with a grain of salt. But I do believe that marijuana use is on the rise in South Carolina, and the laws just are not keeping up with it, and we're criminalizing otherwise law-abiding citizens. Talking point 4, criminal law prohibiting marijuana possession do not deter marijuana use. Well, that rolls right back into what we were just talking about. Doesn't lead to greater use, but it also does not deter the use of it. Probably on a little bit of a rant, because I don't know if it goes into any of this on this stuff down here. You'll hear me from time to time kind of do a little bit of a rant talking about school resource officers. They have been putting more and more of them in our schools for many, many years, long after I was out of school, mind you. I mean, we still kind of wrote on stone tablets when I went to school. The studies and reports that I've found is they really haven't stopped any mass shootings, and they've instead criminalized tens of thousands of our school students for simple infractions. There should not be on-site law enforcement criminalizing students for simple infractions and basically ruining their lives. I mean, until I moved to South Carolina, I had never heard of the school to prison pipeline. And as I got down here and got to South Carolina, and I started kind of getting involved with some of the advocacy movement here, primarily because marijuana advocacy is civil liberties and civil rights advocacy, I learned about the school to prison pipeline, and I just have to shake my head. I mean, what is wrong with our society that, you know, we're trying to criminalize students and lock them up and get them into this justice system that I believe is completely unjust. So anyway, criminal laws prohibiting marijuana possession do not deter marijuana use. It's done very little to deter my use. And how about you? Marijuana use remains consistent despite the high level of enforcement, and there is no detectable relationship between charges and changes in enforcement and levels of marijuana use over time. My understanding here is in the city of Charleston, where I'm located, in December of 2019, the Charleston Police Department de-emphasized simple marijuana possession arrests in the city, primarily because they had a 600-bed prison with 1,800 prisoners in it. And they needed to get that number down to a manageable number. And so the way they did it was simply by stop arresting people for simple possession of marijuana. Marijuana users believe that their behavior will go undetected. Thus, fear of arrest is usually not a factor in people's decision whether or not to use it. They think they're going to a little bit of mouthwash or some Visine or whatever the case, it will go undetected. Nobody will know. So again, not a deterrent. And of course, many of you know, it lasts in your bloodstream. It stores in your fatty tissues. It can take 30 days. Sometimes I'm worried if it might take a little longer, but I'm told 30 days is like a good number for a regular consumer. And that sort of flips back to, I also have heard of schools trying to implement random drug testing of students. One thing that I absolutely will fight against if I see it in my local school districts, and I will absolutely ask you to fight against it, and if it happens in your school district, and I'm asking for you because I want to help protect your kids, protect our kids in the schools. I was talking to another advocate in another state not too long ago, and they advocate in a little bit different organization than ours. And this person had a background of, I believe, 14 or so years as a school teacher. And when I started talking to them about my opposition to random drug testing in schools and some of the effects of what happens with that, she was sort of flabbergasted, and she went, I never knew. I was never aware. But I'm going to tell y'all my feelings on it, and what I believe are the facts is our kids aren't dumb. They know that marijuana stores in the fatty tissues for a good period of time. They know that they can't maybe go smoking on Friday night or Saturday, Friday night at the football game or whatever it might be, and then be tested Monday morning back at school, because they would test hot. And so what do the kids do if they know that there's the possibility of random drug testing in their schools? They find drugs that'll clear their system quicker. Oh, I can take this other drug. I can take that other drug. Cocaine's out of your system, what, 24 hours? And I'm going to tell you right now, what scares the hell out of me about a lot of these drugs is the fentanyl. There's been a lot of folks in my local community here that have overdosed on fentanyl because it was tainted in a product that they thought was cocaine. I mean, this stuff still kind of flabbergasts me. This to me is, again, another reason not to criminalize and to outlaw these drugs, but to legalize and regulate so that we can make sure that what we're getting is safe and effective and what is listed on the label. I've never actually heard of fentanyl tainted on marijuana as a reality, but I've heard law enforcement, throw that delusion out there. And I don't know, maybe I just haven't seen the reports. Maybe I have. I certainly wouldn't want any marijuana that was tainted with fentanyl. That's, again, another reason why I fight for full legalization, because decriminalization does not allow for regulation, does not allow for a safe marketplace. You need full legalization for that. And again, criminalizing it doesn't deter people. They're still going to go out and try and find some, whatever their substance of choice is. And by making it illegal, our government's making it much more dangerous for us, for its citizens. Oh, I still have this share on here, don't I? All right, let me run through just the last little bit of this does not deter part. Marijuana users believe, read that. Marijuana laws have no specific deterrent impact on drug taking behavior. Studies show how offenders continue to use marijuana after their conviction at rates equal to those prior to their arrest. In surveys, most individuals cite health concerns and family responsibilities rather than legal concerns as their primary reasons for ceasing or never initiating marijuana use. And I kind of watched that a lot as I was kind of growing up. I mean, I've heard the statistics are back in the early 70s when NORML was founded. Surveys said about 12% of the population supported reforming marijuana laws. Now we are at 80s, 90% nationwide. It's amazing. We just need our legislators to follow up. But I've watched people get, tested positive and have their jobs threatened or lose their jobs. One friend I'm kind of thinking right off the top of my head, as many of us would, switch to alcohol. And I think that's been detrimental. Let me go ahead and close that little share window. But yes, those are the four basic reasons I think, decriminalization does not deter. Decriminalization doesn't lead to greater use. Far more harm is caused by the prohibition. And decriminalizing frees up police resources. I mean, those are four of the best top suggestions, talking points. We could again go much further into it. That MPP document that I shared with you, it is quite a bit longer, goes into the counter arguments to the arguments. But I like to keep our conversations under an hour. And I actually thought I might run through this in closer to 30 minutes tonight. But I went off on a couple of my tangents as usual. I'm going to try and refine some of these points, and I'm going to try and refine some of this other information from the MPP, because again, it is going to probably be my big focus, and I want to make sure I cover all the different points that I want to cover in January, barring any rescheduling or delay of our event. So, excuse me, folks. Any other thoughts on that as far as decriminalization use? I will briefly talk. If you do have any comments, go ahead, chime in or leave them in the chat. The newer one, and I've got to admit, MPP's newer one is definitely a little bit more on point. Cannabis and alcohol, not cannabis versus alcohol. Talking about their similarities. In the COA Act, they're talking about regulation and basically regulating like alcohol. But if you visit that document, it'll talk about both sides of those arguments. We didn't talk a lot about the health effects in our decrim arguments. And that's another argument that can often be made, especially with much of the newer information that's come out. Folks that use CBD hemp are already, talking about their the benefits that they're receiving. And we all know with the combined effects with some THC blended in, those effects are magnified. And again, there's so many different strains. So I don't want to be talking too generally, but with all these different strains, it is often the effort to finding the right strain for what your ailments are. And that's where I think our medical professionals need to be kind of educated. I went to my doctor the other day, and I don't think I took her one before, so it was one of those where I decided to take her one of the emerging clinical applications for cannabis and cannabinoid books. it's one of the things I've kind of done. I know some of you listening know I've had some health issues lately, and I've gotten heading to a couple of new doctors. Matter of fact, I have a new one coming up that he's a general surgeon for some surgery coming up. I already have the book out ready to drop off to him because as I was at my regular doctor appointment for my annual physical, I gave her the book and we talk about our battles because the doctor I go to is not an MD. And the doctor I go to has got her doctorate in nursing practices, something or another. And she's got her nursing degrees and things like that. And she works with medical doctors, but she is not licensed as a doctor. And apparently there's some legislation, or they would like to see some legislation allowing a little bit more permission for them to do some work. Some things that are, I guess, only doctor only type things now. And she was talking to me about the SCMA, the South Carolina Medical Association. Oh, well, what's the SCMA's position on marijuana legalization or marijuana for medical use? And I just kind of had to roll my eyes because, South Carolina Medical Association toes the line with SLED and just says there's not enough research, there's not enough information, even though, again, right here in Charleston at the MUSC, they're doing research, they're doing studies, they're also doing their testing. I forget what drug it is to try and get you off of your marijuana addiction. I see the ads for it locally. It's ridiculous. But that again is one of the other aspects of it, as many of us know that there are medical benefits for it. And oh, cool. Yeah, I think that might be what she was talking about. I just had a chat in here from Michael. You may or may not be able to read it if you have your chat window open. She'd be a nurse practitioner, which I believe would be accurate then. In a few states, nurse practitioners can write for medical cannabis. Typically, the nurse practitioners are more holistic and will at least listen to the cannabis pitch. That would probably be pretty descriptive of her her position. She does definitely use more of a holistic approach. Some of her story is that she was trying to diagnose some of her own digestive issues, which is partly why I went there, digestive related. And when she tried to express what her findings were, her MDs just kind of poo-pooed it and go, oh, well, we don't follow those protocols. We follow these protocols. So she found a different doctor. And it's kind of funny because my family, my background, my father was a osteopathic doctor. And so DOs are more try to get the body to heal itself, although they are also able to prescribe medicines and do surgeries. And matter of fact, he was kind of the gas passer. He was the anesthesiologist at his own family practice. I have a couple of stitch marks here and there where he showed me up. Kind of fun having a dad as a doctor. Time for your shots, get it right in the garage. I mean, he was actually getting in the car, getting ready to leave for the office and go, oh, here, I need to give you this shot. So come in the garage. Anyway, I believe that's what she was sort of talking about, is nurse practitioners' abilities and and restrictions here in South Carolina, and that the SCMA just kind of wants nothing to do with it. I think she's sort of relating a certain story. Oh, well, you should, because you're really, and she's like, yeah, me and all the rest of it. Oh, no, not all the rest of it. I believe, again, there not only is there medical reasons that we should legalize it, but there's no major detrimental health effects that smoking too much might make you cough, blah blah blah. And even some of those reports, I don't have them in front of me, are not showing the same link of smoking cannabis to cancer as the link of smoking tobacco to cancer. Different chemical compounds are created. But we'll kind of skip on that. All right. I don't want to follow up with, yes, cannabis is not harmless. There's one I kind of got on this MPP bit. No drug is entirely harmless, including cannabis, and we've never said it is. But it's also true that independent scientific and government reviews have concluded that the health risks of cannabis are much lower than those of alcohol and tobacco, and that those risks don't justify arresting and jailing responsible adult cannabis users. We're going to kind of one more on that. We need to be honest about the actual harms of all substances, and it would be irresponsible not to discuss the fact that cannabis is objectively less harmful than alcohol. Do you think people should be aware of the fact that cannabis possesses less potential harm to the consumer than heroin and methamphetamine? Class the same. Why wouldn't you want people to be aware of the fact, oh, actually not with methamphetamine, because I think that's a lower class, but heroin, LSD. Why wouldn't we want people to be aware of the fact that cannabis is less harmful than alcohol too? All right, guys, I'm going to kind of stop my rambling. I see we're at 7:52. If you want, go ahead and save that link to the MPP one. That goes into a lot more information. And we'll probably have this discussion again in a month or two. Well, not a month, but probably a couple months down the road as we get closer to the event in January. And we start focusing a lot more of our discussions and talks on decriminalization here in South Carolina. I will kind of finish up with, we have had a couple of other organizations decline to participate with our January event, one of them being MPP, not that they don't support our cause or belief, but MPP's focus at this point in South Carolina is medical. And they don't want to confuse the message, I guess would maybe be the best way to describe it. They don't want to confuse their message here in South Carolina. My personal feelings on much of it, and we are kind of aware of it with a lot of our legislators, with normal, they know that we want to move forward with more than just medical. And they're afraid of that. They know we want decriminalization, but they know we want full adult use. And so some of the organizations will keep a little bit distance from us during this phase because they don't want to be associated with the decriminalization and full legalization movement. Anyway, with that said, that's our kind of conversation about decriminalization and the talking points tonight. We'll be back again next Wednesday at 7 p.m. with our South Carolina Normal Cannabis conversation. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, go ahead and email them to us or contact us through our contact page on our website, normalsc.org. Don't forget to visit us on our Facebook page and or Twitter and Instagram. And don't forget to follow us on our YouTube channel. That's all I got for you tonight, gang. Thank you very much for taking the time and joining me. And we'll see you again back here next Wednesday.